All right, here we got Mason, otherwise known as One Hand Politics. Welcome to the podcast today. First
Good to be
guest.
here. Super excited.
Yeah,
How close should I be to this?
super excited. Let's just begin. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Mason. If you don't know, One Hand Politics on all socials, but I do just a lot of leftist commentary, news analysis, debating crazy conservatives.
Right.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I've known Evan for a little bit. We've been on a lot of Jubilees together. And just excited to just be branching out and doing content with people.
Yeah.
Love being here, guys.
Yeah, no, I am too. I think it's important, especially among the smaller creators to, collaborate with one another. And
Small, bro?
I'm the small one.
You're huge on TikTok.
I built a little bit of a following early on, but I'm also intend to branch out to some of these other platforms.
It's easy like streaming to just be like in your bubble because most people are just doing it, in their rooms.
Yeah,
and so it's like
true.
You can just be isolated with your community. I think it's good. To
Right.
branch out early.
Yeah. No, that's one thing I've also learned is streaming also requires quite a bit of patience and I guess being locked in and focused, because I get very impatient, and so especially if the chat isn't very interactive, it's very hard to just.
Sometimes you're just like talking to a wall.
Literally. So that's also part of why I'm excited to do more conversational content, because I think having ideas to bounce off of, makes for more interesting conversation. But tell me a little bit about what got you into politics and specifically how you entered the sort of online political world.
I have like a weird political journey, but I started off as a dirty libertarian. That was me.
Oh,
back when I was like
interesting.
15, 16.
Okay.
I think that's like the main starting point for people who get into politics that come from like
Especially
a white
young
suburban.
men. Yeah.
Exactly. So my whole thing was like, I grew up in a very conservative community, very small, very Christian, religious dominated. And for me, that never was appealing, especially when it came to politics. Because I think just for our generation, like even in middle school, high school, you're going to grow up around queer people. You're going to grow up around people from like lower income communities. So for me, it was always like, the whole conservative, very like pro MAGA thing was not really ever appealing. But I was like, my parents worked really hard. Why can't everybody else work really hard?
Right.
And you go down that libertarian pipeline of like liberal on social issues, conservative on fiscal issues.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and I think it's easy. I think it's also easy, depending on, you said you grew up in a more rural white area?
It was kind of like just a suburban
white area.
like working
sure.
class, very, very religious area.
Okay. Yeah. That certainly plays a massive role.
Yeah.
Into
I didn't grow up
capitalist.
super wealthy, but I did grow up like probably the wealthiest in those communities.
Okay.
Like very just like upper middle class type thing.
And then what brought you over to the left?
So going to college, I mean, getting educated is definitely a big help.
Right.
But I also went to a very conservative college.
Interesting.
The most conservative accredited university in
Really?
California. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's the Biblical Institute of Los Angeles. I'm just airing out my alma mater.
Yeah.
But it's in La Mirada. It's a very hyper religious evangelical school.
Okay.
You have to sign a statement of faith before
Okay.
you go, like guaranteeing these are the tenets that you believe.
Right.
You will not like sleep with the same gender.
Right.
Crazy shit.
I'm sure it was like segregated dorms and stuff like
100%.
that.
Yeah, boys and girls dorms. You have to be completely dry campus, even outside of campus. There could be fines if you're drinking, like while you're a student there, even
Wow.
outside of school. Pretty wild shit.
Yeah.
But it was one of the only schools that like I got a very substantial grant to go to, and my parents were like, "We'll subsidize the rest if you go to this religious school." Just very like pushed on like, because I got into a lot of schools and I almost went to UCLA. I was really close.
No kidding.
And then I ended up going into Biola because at the time I was a very like not devout Christian, but I definitely was like, I want to hold these values type of thing. And what's crazy about Biola is everybody minors in religious studies and biblical theology. So it's like part of the gen ed curriculum. They cut off like half of what you usually take at a liberal arts school, and it's just Bible classes.
Wow.
So it's interesting. Looking back, I'm really glad that I have that because I can have a lot of good conversations with people who are Christian.
Yeah, of course.
But what I always tell people is if you go to a Bible school, you either become a pastor or you become like an atheist. Those are the only two roads.
Yeah.
Because when you're studying at that like in-depth level, you can't just hide behind the, oh, I just won't think about these issues.
Right.
Because most people, when you're going to church once a week, it's really easy to just, any questions that you have or doubts,
to not think super strongly about it because of kind of ignorance. You know?
And your community around you is like, well, you're doubting God. Like, sure, it's good to like think about things, but never like lose faith. That's you thinking you're better than God.
Yeah.
And so it's really easy to just be like, okay, I won't think about that. And then the other 6 days of the week, you're never thinking about it again.
Wow.
But when you're going to a university level, like course that's specifically going over foundational texts and how we got theology and how the Bible became canon through these church leaders who approved all of this, it's just like, Jesus Christ, I learned so much. One of the craziest things was learning that most of the books in the New Testament, we have no idea who the authors are. So like Luke and John, for instance, you'd think Luke and John were the ones who wrote that.
Right.
It's really just their perspective of the resurrection and the life of Jesus.
Others.
Well, told by them, 2 scribes who wrote it down and then compared notes and then came up with like what became the canon through the church approval. And also learning there's so many books that aren't approved. This, I don't want to turn this into a whole atheist stream.
No,
but,
it's interesting.
There's so many books that are just not considered canon, but were still written by apostles. Like even Mary Magdalene, she has a very, very intensive understanding of Jesus' life. I mean, she was so close to him. And the church leaders were just like, yeah, this wasn't inspired by God.
Wow.
Which is crazy how they determine like this is God's word, just spoken through like their disciples.
Right.
And these people were very spiritual, but just not God's word.
So
it's kind of crazy.
That's interesting though, because you mentioned that that part of what brought you further to the left was education. But if you went to a very Christian, school and a very religious school and conservative school, what was there still something about, I guess, the nature of social science classes or anything like that that still sort of brought you over? Or, did online politics have a play, or did your question of religion perhaps
I think questioning religion for sure was like, okay, a lot of these things that I held as core foundations are things that I'm questioning. So it really led me to consider a lot of what I thought my core foundations were. And then also, even though it was a hyper-religious school, very, very diverse. Biola has one of the largest international student bases because like Christian communities across the world are like, hey, this is one of the principled religious institutions you can go to study.
Right.
So I met people from all over the country, Rwanda, South Korea, and that really helped me gain like cultural perspective of, hey, I'm a white Hispanic dude that grew up in a very white predominant community, never really heard from like other cultures. And now I'm meeting people who are going to the school who come from all walks of life, really help branch out just that type of understanding of the world. And then specifically talking with folks who came from lower income communities, that shit changed my whole perspective of just like, damn, these people are working just as hard, if not harder, than most like suburban white folks. And they're not seeing the same returns. They're not seeing the same material conditions.
And their lack of ability to rise is inhibited. It's not due to just like a lack of innate character or drive or something like that.
Yeah, 100%. And so seeing like the alt-right pipeline of like the Ben Shapiro's owning woke, feminists, blah, blah, blah. Like, I was like, okay, well, what's the counter to this?
Right.
Who are the people that are going to own the conservatives?
And a lot of times there wasn't that. I knew growing up in high school, although I never considered myself conservative or even libertarian for that matter, I had some culturally right beliefs, mostly just as a matter of not seeing that within male-dominated spaces online, just very much within the gaming community. Like, I know some people are going to be familiar with like Gamergate and all of that, but you just had zero representation of left-wing issues in male-dominated spaces on cultural things, and so it was very easy to just fall into right-wing talking points because there was just severe lack of that sort of content.
The left has always been hyper concentrated in like academia and intelligentsia circles, and so it's hard for people who aren't ever exposed to that to really understand left-wing issues. Besides like cultural impact, I think that like music was also just a great radicalizing moment for me. I've listened to Kendrick for most of my adolescence, and really like putting together like, oh shit, these lyrics mean something. These words are talking about a perspective that I've never had to go through. And then just watching different creators. There's a lot of leftists that I just started to watch like their debates or their news reacts, and that kind of helped me gain my perspective. And I remember having a big awakening moment in like 2019 when I was just listening to Ben Burgess, actually. Ben
Oh,
Burgess.
yes. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But he was talking to, I think it was Charlie Kirk on his podcast. And I would just always I was like, I want a balanced media diet. I want to ingest
Right,
both
right.
ideas to come to the common ground. But yeah, he really radicalized me of, oh my God, like this is making so much sense how intersectional a lot of these systemic issues are.
Mm-hmm.
And I would laugh at ideas of, oh, systemic racism, we passed the Civil Rights Act, that's not a thing anymore.
Right.
And it's just seeing how that plays into economic disparities, how that plays into material conditions for people,
Right.
that really is okay, we need fundamental change. It can no longer just be incremental band-aids on bullet wounds.
Mm-hmm.
We need to actually ground ourselves in how we're going to be able to fix a lot of these systemic
Right.
issues.
Right. And then you were a part of the first Surrounded video,
Yeah.
which is now, of course, massive series on YouTube. Was that the first video that you did from Jubilee? Did you do that and then subsequently get into streaming and content, or had you already been involved in that prior?
Yeah, I think there's 3 big milestones in my social media or online politics career.
Sure.
The first one was back in 2022. This was right after I stopped being an elementary school teacher. I taught first grade for a year. And then I just got really invested in electoral politics because there was all these projections of giant red wave in 2022. I thought that, especially it was right after Roe v. Wade got overturned. I was like, I got to get involved somehow in electoralism. So I flew out to Philly, started doing door knocking for Josh Shapiro, actually.
No
Yeah,
kidding.
isn't that insane?
Wow, that is
It's
pretty.
insane. It's
That is
insane.
pretty insane.
But his opponent, I'm blanking. I think it was Mastriano. I don't know. Someone fact check me. Say in the comments. Mason's wrong. But yeah, his opponent was like, we need to criminalize women for getting abortions. It's not just abortion practitioners. They
right.
need to go to jail. We need to hold them accountable for murder. All this crazy shit.
Right.
We should be jailing people who are openly trans for identity fraud. And these were just policies that he propagated.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I got to help stop this shit. Mm-hmm. And Josh Shapiro was like, I mean, people of your stream probably know Josh Shapiro and his insane beliefs, especially on Israel.
Yeah.
But just definitely a much better alternative to Dan Mastriano.
Okay.
So I was door knocking for him, and then Jubilee hit me up because I did I think it was a TikTok of making fun of anti-vaxxers, and I know some people who are on the staff of Jubilee.
Oh, okay.
And so they're like, hey, we're doing an odd one out, anti-vax. So it was 5 anti-vaxxers and 2 pro-vaxxers. And I was like, hell yeah, I'd love to do that. Because I've always done social deduction games with friends.
Right.
Hitler,
Yes.
Werewolf, Mafia.
You did introduce me to that game. Now love it, and all my friends are obsessed
It's a great
with it.
game.
Yeah.
Man. It's super fun. So yeah, I was like, hell yeah, I'd love to do this. And so, and my mom is actually very anti-vax. So I'm exposed to a lot of those talking points from her.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I went on, and to be fair, the easiest people to trick in a social deduction game is probably going to be anti-vaxxers.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was not too much of a struggle.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about it going in. I'm like, how can I bring attention to this video? And I was like, wait, if I inject an Easter egg here with Hassan Piker,
Yeah.
and he always watches Jubilee because that was his big thing at the time.
That was, yeah.
I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'll do that. And so halfway through the video, I said, oh, we all disagree with the mainstream media. Who are people that you guys actually like?
Yeah, right.
And someone said Ben Shapiro, and that was my trap card because I was like, yes, Ben Shapiro's pro-vax. And he's always been someone who has said the COVID vaccine's a great achievement of the Trump administration.
True.
One of the only ones who didn't go down the science skepticism.
Yeah. He's stayed firmly within the neoconservative establishment Republican sphere of ideology, for
Which
sure.
is funny because he's now a huge Trump cheerleader, but he still has to throw in a snide remark every now and then just to show I'm not full MAGA.
I mean, that's sort of it's sort of to the point that Trump is really on a policy level so similar to other Republicans, aside from maybe tariffs. On a policy level, he's essentially the same. It's just sort of the civics, and the brazen attitude of how he goes about accomplishing things is what bothers Shapiro. It's the demeanor of being a fascist, not the actual policies themselves.
It's a populist rhetoric.
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
firmly against. He hates populism.
For sure. Yeah.
But yeah, so I knew someone was going to say Ben Shapiro. I called her out on it, and that just cemented me as oh, this guy's anti-vax. The whole room totally just believed me. And then I threw in, I was like, I like more actual, freedom lovers like Steven Crowder.
Yeah.
And then I said Hank Pecker.
Yeah.
And that's like Hassan's alter ego or whatever.
Right,
and that
yeah.
shit blew up. So then I got a huge following on TikTok and Twitter specifically, just
Nice,
because
yeah.
people were like, in his community, like, oh my god, this guy did funny joke,
Yeah.
awesome. Let me go follow him. So that was like the first like introduction,
Yeah.
and then I didn't really stream after that, just because I was so involved in the electoral politics.
Right.
Kind of was like maybe I should have started earlier, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
The second one was the Charlie Kirk debate.
Okay.
So after that, I went on a couple like middle grounds for Jubilee. It was liberal teachers versus conservative parents. That was one that's insane because the CEO of PragerU was just on there as a conservative parent.
No kidding.
They didn't even disclose who she was. She
and
just
she
came on.
didn't-
She's
and
like,
she
yeah.
didn't mention that she
No,
was. Wow.
she's like, as a parent, it's really hard to see you liberal teachers like indoctrinate people. And it just says Melissa
That's
as
deeply
conservative
disturbing.
parent.
Oh
yeah,
my God.
and I didn't even know who she was because most like these conservative media orgs hide like their leadership.
Yeah,
because they're not the spokesman.
Of course, yeah.
But DJ Danarchy, shout out. He's like a Majority Report like clip guy and Twitter
Okay.
poster. But he reached out to me. He's like, dude, this is the CEO of PragerU. And I was like, what the fuck? And so that's when I really started to think, damn, Jubilee really does do things in mysterious ways.
Yeah, yeah, of
Like,
course, yeah.
Let me see how we can kind of stack the deck in order to make like conservatives seem somewhat reasonable.
Right.
Because if that's what most people point out, even in the comment section, is the liberals or the left people are almost always just like regular working class people. And the conservatives are always some sort of media figure or media training,
Right.
or maybe not all of them, but at least one of them is like really like involved in social media for like conservative talking points.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Which is also, I think, to the point of why I see it, and I know that you share this perspective as well, important that we have left-wing voices on these platforms, even if we don't in a meta sense agree with it overall, being the means or medium of the way that people are informed, but like we recognize the power and influence this has had. And, the right is so much more shameless with the way that they approach politics as entertainment. Mm-hmm. Like we mentioned before, the Ben Shapiro owns feminist videos. Like those are so, they're so shameless in how much of it is just a spectacle, right?
Yeah.
And I think that like, Jubilee obviously does that also to such a high degree, but these videos are going to happen like regardless. What do you think about what do you think about just like that sort of broad perspective?
Yeah, I think it's really just political porn at the end of the day. And I've talked to like some of the casting directors and said that to their face, and they keep inviting me back on. So I don't think that they're like very adverse to receiving criticism. I think that they're fine as long as you're not like, we've talked about this of certain people who've also gone on who just torch that bridge.
Right. Yeah.
These are all Nazis. Like, I hope that they deserve what's coming to them. And
right.
Like that.
Yeah.
I don't really go that way just because I think that really, especially to normies who aren't involved in politics, is just so unappealing.
Right.
And my goal is always, I want to bring more people to the left. I want this to seem that this is the only rational way to think about political dialogue. Anything else that's devoid of that, liberalism, conservatism, is just masks of protecting capital. And that's really what I want to convey to people. And it's been working on my platform. We're not super big on 1HP, but the people that have come, I have a lot of folks who are in their 40s and their 50s who are like, hey, you're really young, but I really appreciate your perspective.
Yeah.
I never thought left-wingers were intelligent at all because I've only watched Ben Shapiro.
Yeah,
and
honestly,
Steven
a
Crowder.
lot of that it's just really lack of perspective, which is just a testament to how everything works, though.
Yeah.
It's like once you meet more people and hear more perspectives, your mind gets open more. And
I mean, I think people are going to go on these videos no matter what. And better that we have good representatives of the left than people who are using that as like a veneer of, oh my God, I just want to see millions of views. I want people to hear who I am.
Right. Yeah. Totally. I mean, one issue though, I think, that people will suggest, especially given the more recent video with the Mehdi Hassan far right, is the growth of just the alt-right, the far right. And I think, right before you coming up, we were talking a little bit about how massive Nick Fuentes is. He just got, you mentioned he just got his own New York Times piece on him. What is your perspective on the alt-right? Do you think that this is sort of veneer of far-right politics is going to be the future of the GOP? Is it still something that is concentrated and, you know, just very loud within the right? And then is there something that the online left or the left broadly is doing wrong to address it?
I think there's a lot of ways you can view it. So Trump winning in 2024 really showed that Americans do not give a shit about political rhetoric or extremism. For so long, we've been told that if you are outside of the Overton window, you're going to get demolished at the ballot box.
Right.
And that's why Kamala can't go full socialist. Kamala can't appear as too progressive.
Right.
She can't talk about trans people on the road because anything that's outside of like normal Overton window is going to get completely demolished. And Trump proved all of that wrong. He won every swing state saying we're going to deport as many people as possible. We need to stop the transgender delusion. All of this extreme stuff that you'd only see in 4chan chat rooms or Nick Fuentes streams, he said.
Right.
And so I think that is a really important lesson to both Democrats and Republicans who are trying to regain control of the party. I know that there are many congressional leaders and Senate Republicans who want the man just completely gone,
Right.
even though on the outside they're showing support just for the audience. But I really think that we're at a crossroads of America going in one populist direction, and it's either going to be this Nick Fuentes ethnic supremacy fascist route, or it is going to be socialism, collectivism, Zohran Mamdani.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see which way.
Right.
I think that a lot of the far right wing of the Republican Party is trying to destroy the Republican Party, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Nick Fuentes is probably one of the biggest critics of Donald Trump, surprisingly enough.
Totally.
But saying that Trump is too liberal. And he's even going on his streams in support of Gavin Newsom. I don't know if you've seen this. But he said, like, Gavin Newsom's a strong white man. We need him in office.
I know,
And he's not joking about that. Like, he would rather have a white leader than have somebody like J.D. Vance, who is a Republican, but has a interracial marriage, who has like interracial or kids. And
Fuentes also just has so much contempt for his own audience. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Yeah.
I think
he hates his life.
That's
really the right.
A part of him, understands that he's sort of made his bed with these just horribly stupid and ridiculously evil people.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I really think that it's going to be either those people that gain more and more prominence, or it's going to be some sort of recontrol of neoconservatism. They abandon the Trumpism of the past and say, hey, we're going to move back to like a place of civility politics, classic Mitt Romney. We'll see.
Yeah, I think Twitter and X is what really, for me, makes it feel as though the far right movement is much larger than I previously expected. But at the same time, especially polling on Israel-Palestine, the Republican Party is still overwhelmingly pro-Israel, which counteractively makes me believe that it is more of an online movement. But it's really hard to estimate and guesstimate, considering, we saw the role that alternative media and podcasts played in this last election, and I think that growth is just spiraling and continuing. I even mentioned, I think that Charlie Kirk is probably at the pinnacle of his career in terms of fame and popularity. He's essentially as popular today as Tucker Carlson would be like 10 years ago, when he was at the top of his game in terms of Fox News. And so alternative media is taking that space, but it's a matter of what direction it is and whether or not the populism / extremism is really going to be a broader trend that materializes, Yeah.
And it's so funny how the Democrat strategy seems to be right now. Let's invest more in liberal content creators. This is going to be the counter of going back to milquetoast. Joe Biden was the greatest president.
We just need young people doing the same rhetoric and doing the same things that they were.
Exactly. This is all just trying to turn it from what is said on mainstream news to just let's get it in the homes of people. It's kind of like those ads that you see now for products that's just people talking into their phone.
Oh yeah.
And it's like this is no different than a $500 advertisement, except they're paying this person probably like $100 just to do it all themselves
on TikTok,
and it feels more authentic because it's like, oh, it's someone in their bedroom. I can totally trust them over what seems to be like a polished ad. It's virtually the same thing.
Which
is crazy.
But
I saw a pay stub for Chorus.
Really?
In your living room?
No. One thing I also want to talk to you about was Zohran Mamdani. I think that segueing into from the conversation of the alternative of where we can go, is it going to be this, far right neo-fascist populism, or is it going to be, a truly populist leftism that, centerpieces affordability and worker, based politics? What do you think Zohran's win in the Democratic Party primary for New York's mayoral race means? And do you think this is going to be the start of a broader trend? Just what are your general thoughts?
I think it's undeniable that he sparked an energy that's very rarely seen in Democrat electoralism. This is really what they've been yelling about for the past 5-10 years even. We need to get young people energized. We want them to identify heavily with Democrat politicians. And Zohran did that. I mean, getting record-breaking volunteers, the turnout that he had in a primary election, which typically does not see that many people come out in New York City. Like that is all trends towards something that is changing.
Right.
And I think the fact that you're seeing Andrew Cuomo completely abandon the Democratic Party, while he's been one of probably the largest and strongest pillars for decades, as far as like New York Democrat politics, it's crazy, and it shows that he's like trying to just grasp back onto the steering wheel of, we need to go back to traditional establishment Democrat politics, and I think Zohran's really breaking through that ceiling of, hey, you can be an open socialist, you can be someone who advocates for policies that seem to be impossible under the American Overton window. And I think that he recognizes that a lot of his policies he can't do unilaterally. I mean, I don't even want to say I know that he talks about that. He'll have to work with the state assembly. He'll have to work with Hochul. It's really important for him to still be a champion of these issues while identifying these are the people that are in our way. These are the roadblocks that are stopping your quality of life and your cost of living to go down. And that's really what you need from a leftist politician. While there are so many influences that are trying to stop the messaging that he has or the policies that he propagates, just identifying and remaining strong in that is what makes it important. It's like Bernie with Medicare for All.
Or sidetracking it with like conversations about globalize the Intifada, or his whether or not he believes Israel has a right to exist, which is just like, absurd questions to ask a New York City mayoral candidate. But one thing that I think has been incredibly revealing is like, we are less than 2 months out from New York City's mayoral election, and New York State rather, Democratic Party leadership still has not endorsed Zohran Mamdani. And to me, that is functionally a way of signaling that you do not have a strong preference between Andrew Cuomo, which the Democratic Party base clearly suggested they do not want as their candidate, who has multiple sexual harassment allegations as well as corruption scandals. And the guy, versus the guy who wants to put a public grocery store in each borough, do free public bus and transit, and do a rent freeze and build new affordable housing for New Yorkers. And it's wild that is considered too radical of an idea for them to be okay with, endorsing. And they're so much more comfortable with establishment politicians, despite those people clearly not representing the interests and values of what the quote unquote Democratic Party purports to believe, right?
100%. Yeah, I think that it's not even like we're not supporting anybody. I really think that it's just an implicit endorsement of Andrew Cuomo. Like the lack of endorsement for the current Democratic nominee, front runner of the race, just shows that you'd rather have Andrew Cuomo. You just don't want to openly say that you're going against the Democratic Party. And I think Jeffries, Richie Torres, these monstrous people are clearly just not in priority of helping the working class people that are supposed to be their base.
Did you watch Richie Torres's
with Adam? Yeah. That was fantastic. Good for Adam. Also just really depressing to watch.
I know.
Like an open Democrat politician, not know how to answer these just emotional questions. Like, it wasn't like a hard-hitting interview.
So cold, calculated, and just waiting for the next response. It was like
the snark is he was just so snarky with
totally. It was it was disturbing. We're talking about the Richie Torres Adam Freeland appearance that recently occurred. I think New York City's mayoral race. Also, what people have to understand is when Eric Adams won, the Democratic Party were touting this as a symbol, or rather a strategy that has worked that should be applied for nationwide, right? And then as soon as something that completely goes against establishment politics, now all of a sudden it's an anomaly. It's just because he had a social media presence. It's just because, I don't know, Andrew Cuomo just happens to be unpopular. When, like you mentioned, Mamdani went ahead and broke records for canvassers and volunteers. A new poll actually recently came out, and we'll go ahead and hop over to the reaction. But that Mamdani now has nearly a two times lead over Andrew Cuomo. In the new Siena poll.
And Adams is staying in.
Yeah,
let's go, Adams.
Adams is also staying in. But this also goes to show you that even if Adams were to drop out, if every single voter from Eric Adams were to go into Andrew Cuomo's vote demographic, Zohran would still have the plurality of the votes. But one thing that I found very interesting was when you broke down the issues by or when you broke down each candidate by issue, New York City's mayoral race happened to ask people about how they felt about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and who would be better on this issue. Mamdani also has a large plurality. In fact, consistently even larger plurality than some issues like crime or dealing with Trump, which shows that, in one of the largest Jewish cities outside of, I think, Tel Aviv, young American Jews and, people who are within their peers do not view this issue through the lens that, the pro-Israel crowd and the, ultra Zionist crowd views it through.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, he's leading in all of the issues. I am always really skeptical of polling just because I've been burned so much in the past couple election cycles. But it is still good to have a temperature check on where some of the voters are leaning.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, granted, I think it's also the case that I think local polling is a bit harder to gauge.
Yeah.
But I think the polling was, if anything, it was relatively underestimating Mamdani prior to the race. Mm-hmm. So if this says anything, I think it should be very promising for the general. Although I don't think that there's much of a chance Cuomo.
Yeah, he was supposed to win in the 8th round or whatever. Just rip number one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's right. Because they have ranked choice.
Only for the primary though.
Yeah,
which is weird.
Yeah,
I think it was voted amongst Democrat leadership, but not the general. Which is really dumb.
Yeah, it may be. I don't know if they have ranked choice for the Republican. Maybe they do. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Like when is a Republican going to win New York City's mayoral race? But Andrew Cuomo he does have a strategy. Okay, are you ready for a strategy? You may have already seen this, his strategy is to call out Zohran for meeting up with Hassan Piker, and Hassan Piker's infamous quote blasted, "America deserved 9/11."
I like the one on the right.
That's oh my god, yeah.
No, it's so funny the screenshots that they chose to use for this too. Like, what the fuck is that one on? Is that him saying it? Is that the same?
I don't know. No, because it was him on. I believe he was on Joe Rogan when he said it.
Really?
I think so.
Interesting.
I actually maybe not. Maybe
I don't
not.
think he's ever been on Joe Rogan.
Maybe he hasn't. Maybe they played it on Joe Rogan, or somebody talked about it on Joe Rogan.
But that's so funny too. Like, look at these dudes getting donuts. Look how dangerous this is.
And somebody said, I think it's funny that Cuomo identified, oh, here's this incredibly popular streamer. Let's show Zohran being paired with this streamer, which is ultimately in Zohran's favor. As a means of degrading and undermining him, because of course the whole Zohran is a Islamist anti-Semite worked so well in the in the primary of course.
Literally, like, the racist caricatures on news pamphlets that they'd send out to people, like that shit was insane.
But no, I found this incredibly hilarious, and
it's also just so funny thinking of Andrew Cuomo being like, Mamdani and Hassan Piker together. It's so hilarious.
Yeah. You know who did say he wants Mamdani to win? PBD when you were on.
Yes.
He had this argument that he can't wait for Zohran to win because it's going to show the failures of socialism, and who's also repeated this is our best friend
Vivek.
Yeah, so
I want to talk to him on a Jubilee. That's honestly why I keep going on. I'm like, one of these days, Vivek
you think
Ramaswamy is going to walk through that door.
You think so?
I think so. I mean, he's running for Ohio governor. He's trying to still maintain like a national profile. I think it's this November.
You think he runs in 2028?
I don't know. It depends on what his relationship with Vance is like. Vance obviously is going to be the front runner, at least going into the race. Right. I don't think that Vance is going to get the nomination.
Oh, interesting.
And a lot of people are like, Mason, that's crazy. He's clearly the guy. I just don't think he has sauce.
I don't think he does.
I think it's going to be Josh Hawley. That's a crazy dark horse take that a lot of people don't agree with. But I think Josh Hawley has every single quality that you'd want in like a successor to MAGA fascist populism.
They definitely, MAGA and the Republican Party broadly obviously clearly shows they do prefer outsiders, although maybe outsiders, with more of that sort of cult-like personality.
Yeah, well, Hawley's just so terrifying because he has like a populist feel about him.
Right.
Like there's a lot of clips of him taking on credit card monopolies and telling MasterCard like, why are you charging people over for this?
Right.
He had another big thing with like airlines who were using algorithms to determine seat costs for people. So it's like based on like your searches. It was crazy. He unveiled basically the company operates through
seat costs through
upscaled pricing for like certain people. Yeah. So it's based on like what your search history looks like. Like it takes into account like a whole bunch of things that just basically gives you an arbitrary price on what seats look like for different airline
on what they think you'd be
willing to pay.
Wow.
Exactly. It's surcharging literally.
Wow.
That is nuts. He's like, this is fucking insane. Like, how are you guys just randomly arbitrarily choosing this? And he got the CEO to admit, oh, we're not the ones choosing it. You know, these are algorithms that are made, basically trying to just
algorithms that we've put in place.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
It's like just deferring the blame to fucking people's monetary conditions.
That is absolutely nuts. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Vivek is interesting because he was supposed to be the co-head of Doge. A lot of people forget this, but he was supposed to co-head Doge with Elon Musk. And we saw how that turned out. I mean, Doge, I think, promised... What did Doge initially promise? I think they initially promised $1 trillion in spending cuts. The government right now is spending more than it did last year.
Yeah.
And I think all they were able to manage to cut was about 50 billion. No, I don't think
it might have been like 260 million.
Okay.
But yeah, Adam Kahn does a lot of breakdowns on this. He's a big Doge guy that I go to.
Right.
But he literally went from promising $1 trillion to promising like 600 billion to promising 2 billion to only delivering most of the 200 million.
Most of the things that they were going after were things that made up a fraction of a percent of the budget. Like people made such a big deal about the USAID, United States Agency for International Aid and Development, and it's like, oh my God, why are we spending like $30,000 for this little like LGBTQ program in this Latin America country? But it made up such a fraction of a percent of the budget, and they think that was somehow contributing to our U.S. debt, when now we see like their real goal, of course, was to actually cut things like Medicare and Medicaid, and most likely Social Security next. But it's not actually going towards benefiting our debt and deficit. Instead, it's going to tax cuts.
For the anytime people talk about debt, there's only three things that ever matter to that conversation. It's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and defense spending. Those are the only three where you can make substantial cuts and actually lower the debt.
A difference.
And two of those is lifelines for people that otherwise they would not be productive members of the economy. They can't help contribute to paying into the tax bill for rising debt without guarantees or lifelines for just basic living. And defense, if you want to cut that, be my guest. But I mean, most people really don't.
Or government revenue, which I think is something that a lot of Americans miss, is even when it comes to social programs, I think that universal programs are the way to go about distributing any sort of welfare benefit. And if your concern is, well, I don't want to spend money on for example, when it comes to, like, this is a big talking point when it comes to making college tuition free.
You're helping rich kids.
Yeah, you're going to be helping rich kids. Whatever is spent on people who do not need it can be clawed back in taxes.
Yep.
And when you means test things to make it just like targeted towards poor individuals, number one, because it ends up becoming like a bureaucratic application process, in the same way that they made Medicaid now, where it's like you have to be earning a certain amount. You need to be making sure that you have proof of working and proof of income. You make this entire barrier where you end up missing a lot of people that otherwise would have been eligible. But on top of that, we already know how much people make, and that is through our tax system. So if you just, again, claw things back in taxes, you don't have to ask and show proof of income for people multiple times a year for multiple different programs. So you can just make programs universal, and then whatever is spent that didn't need to be spent can be clawed back in taxes. And
100%.
I think that government revenue, we need to treat government revenue as just like I said, a means of clawing back unnecessary spending, you know?
Yeah. I think that the secret is going to be just hiding that under like a patriot, patriotism.
Yeah.
Because it's
taxes are patriotic.
Well, not even that. Just like the programs itself of let's make sure we have the best healthcare system in the world.
Yeah.
You're an American. You're entitled to be
Right.
making sure that you'll never be sick in this country.
Right.
We should have the smartest kids ever. Let's have education be universal for everybody. Like, those are ways that I think you could get, especially these new right-wing populists, on board with. Because a lot of them are showing that they are fine criticizing capitalism now.
Right.
It's just they're saying that the real harms to society are all of these people that don't have the same ethnic background as us, or that aren't speaking English, or that are LGBTQ.
And they've been more overt with even just like having like tariffs, for example, or just like not going after rather free trade, and not being total libertarians in the way that the Republican Party seemingly was like 10 years ago.
Yeah, the Tea Party was crazy towards changing people's attitudes just towards government spending entirely.
Right.
Like, I feel like every Republican in the Obama era was a libertarian.
Right.
And now it's completely shifted.
Yeah, totally. But I did want to show you this clip of Vivek,
Ben Burgess,
basically espousing. I got it from a Ben Burgess tweet, but basically espousing something similar to what PBD said, where he can't wait for Zohran to win because he's going to show the failures of socialism. And we'll go ahead and take a look.
Well, look, I think from the politics of it, I think it's pretty clear that if Mamdani does win in New York, that's actually a gift for Republicans in the midterms.
They're running ads about him already.
But the fact of the matter is, still, New York is one of America's premier cities. We don't want to see this city fail. What I want to see Republicans do, and what I want to see us doing here, is set an example for being the party of capitalism. What does that alternative actually look like? Because if you look at young people, why is Mamdani popular? You look at many young people say they view socialism as a more favorable system than capitalism by a majority. So I think what we're missing right now is a pro-capitalist movement to say this is the best system known to the history of man to lift people up from poverty. Make that case to young people. And I think that's up to us. And this is a great wake-up call for our side to say we're painting that alternative vision rather than making effectively the case for Andrew Cuomo, which is a pretty sad state of affairs if those are your choices.
You're born working.
Look, I think
dude, why does he always sound like he's about to like pull out a used car and be like, and that's why you can buy this car for $2,500?
Yeah, literally. Yeah. What do you think of his strategy of going for the pro-capitalist vision alternative?
Yeah, that's what we really need is more defense of wealthy interests.
Right. Yeah.
We need the capitalist class to feel more secure. I just think these are people out of touch with their own party.
Right.
And Vivek was literally the guy who was running on civic nationalism, running to the right of Donald Trump in the primary.
Right.
He would never criticize Trump. He was like probably the biggest bootlicker that was in the field because Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley were really taking on that. We're not afraid to criticize Trump.
Right.
Vivek was not. He was like, Trump is the best president we've ever seen in modern history. I just am a younger face. I think that I could do things a little differently.
Yeah.
But his whole thing was like running to the right of him. Even on tariffs, he was super pro-tariff, which is weird. Like you mentioned, that's by definition an anti-capitalist economic policy.
Yeah.
You are inhibiting free trade.
Right.
You are putting more taxes on the consumer effectively.
Right.
So it's interesting that I mean, it's not that interesting. We know that these people are all full of shit. They're just going to say whatever it is that they think is important for the cultural moment.
Right.
And for him, it's like, oh, socialism's being talked about? Capitalism, capitalism, capitalism. But when it comes to like economic policy, they're totally fine just being as flexible as they want to be.
Yeah, as much as, I'm sure he espoused the pro-tariff policy, I doubt he would have gone in with the whole the universal tariff application that the Trump administration has gone into. Part of my theory about that is a means of reducing the deficit that they just blew up, because now we're reeling in I think several billion, dozens of billions of dollars in tax revenue from tariffs. And there was a piece I recently read where that's going to be hard to quit when it becomes a major source of government revenue. It becomes harder to just like quit that, especially given that we've just extended the 2017 Donald Trump tax cuts.
There's a lot of judges though who are looking into what the legality of some of these tariffs are though.
Right. Yeah.
And they're talking about even
Most of them
having to do
sweeping
refunds.
ones, yeah.
Yeah, which is going to come from American taxes.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I did see that. Yeah, we saw that of course, there's always a million appeals with these sorts of court cases, but I did see that judges have been ruling that the sweeping tariffs have been unconstitutional, which is unsurprising. Donald Trump is breaking records for the most amount of executive orders.
He's at like 206, I think.
Which is also just insane because they control every house of Congress. Like they can pass legislation,
It's just the pace of this administration is so intentional,
right?
Because they're really just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Right.
It's like Biden was so ineffectual as a president. We don't care about passing legislation through Congress.
Right.
We're just going to get in there and do it. America needs a dictator right now. I mean, these are all like the messages of Trump himself. But
and when you flood the media cycle, it becomes so much more difficult to concentrate and remain on one topic. Like, I think what is happening right now with the CDC and RFK should be so much more of a top news story than it currently is. But
as we're getting to another wave of COVID infections, I know so many people who have the new stratus, I think is what it is.
Yeah. A new wave of COVID infections, and also beyond that, like you have Florida announcing that they want to end all.
We're bringing back measles, people. Let's go.
Vaccines.
Make smallpox great again.
Utterly insane. I mean, I've always found I always have I have a major gripe with just the health and wellness influencer crowd that believes the entire reason for all of our worst illnesses are seed oils and food dyes. So that stuff just frustrates me as is. But
shameless plug, there's a podcast called Kill the Computer with Juniper. She's like an onion person on Twitter. She's like a shit poster. And then Caleb. I just went on an episode and we talked about the alternative health community. And like people who, I forget the name of it, but it's piss drinking. So people who drink their piss in order to solve a lot of their problems.
God.
Yeah. And it's growing. And the reason why a lot of these alternative health communities are getting so large is just because of how fucked up our healthcare system is.
Right.
When it's not really a matter of people's like craziness or intelligence, which I think it's really easy for us to be like piss drinkers, fucking insane people.
Yeah.
But these people get so reinforced in these ideas because the status quo is not giving them what they need.
Right.
When there's so many barriers for people to just get basic preventative care or even talk to a health professional, or people who have been burned in the past by going bankrupt from medical debt, they try to find any other remedy that can solve what is bothering them besides mainstream healthcare. Which,
I think they're evaluating and diagnosing that yes, there's this corrupt profit incentive with our healthcare system, which is it's insane that a lot of these people will admit that, but then they don't come to the conclusion that what we need is a non-for-profit healthcare system, which would be socialized medicine, socialized insurance, and socialized care. And like you said, that would instill preventative measures where people can just go to the doctor, not have to worry about a bill at the end of it. But all of these guru influencers don't believe that whatsoever, and a part of it is they have a very, I think, individualistic mindset, and that you can escape the paradox or the system or the or the what's the Andrew Tate term? The
Matrix.
The Matrix. Yeah, literally.
Break out of the Matrix.
Yeah, break out of the
Beat
Matrix.
your wife.
And you can do it with this. You can do it with this secret knowledge. I think that's what is in large part contributing to it. But
it really is like a matter of social identity.
Yeah.
Of like, I found a community that is a free thinker like me. It's not
Right.
part of the sheep. And people get wrapped up of like, yeah, piss drinking is just my life. I'm going to advocate to everybody about piss drinking. It's crazy. And that's like obviously a very extreme example, but even things like anti-vax sentiments, things like you said, the seed oils, carnivore diets, the
Oh my
keto,
God.
like all of that shit is just not sustainable for
Yeah.
long-term health. And people
can't.
get so caught up in, oh my God, I lost 30 pounds this month because my body is just burning fat instead of protein. Like
right.
it really destroys
Yeah,
you.
there's also an obsession with like what was ancestral.
Yeah, no, it really is like a fascist, like this mythology of like I'm going back to my primal instincts as a warrior.
Exactly.
I'm an animal.
Yeah. It's also just like a misunderstanding of how humans evolved. So like a lot of them will identify.
Well, they don't believe in evolution.
Yeah, this is true. But like, I mean, I obviously, as a vegan, I'm very frustrated with carnivore diet speculation and ideology, because they'll say like, oh my God, there was this, time within our history where, most of our diet was essentially meat, and all we did was hunt, and it was essential to the development of our brains. But like, even our ability to hunt and create tools means that we had enough brain development prior to even think to be able to do that, and that would have came from plants. So you're just selecting for a very particular time within human history to justify it.
Or like Texas banning lab-grown meat. Did you see that?
Yes.
Like, this is just anti-innovation. And these are the people that claim to be so pro-capitalist, so pro-private development, being able to usher us into new ages, and yet they don't want to see any alternatives.
Well, that's the whole contradiction of it all. Is it's like you guys understand and believe capitalism and the profit incentive and all these amazing things, but even like someone like Patrick Bet-David, who recently did the Surrounded video defending capitalism, even he would say, "Oh, you can't trust big pharma because of their profit incentive." But it's like, first of all of the health and wellness industry, like that's in many ways is large part a larger industry than like big pharma and vaccine manufacturers. Like in many ways, the supplement brands and all of that is a very lucrative way of getting people onto stuff, especially because you don't have to demonstrate it with science, and it's easier to manufacture without a bunch of patents and regulations.
Yeah, if you're a pro-capitalist, big pharma should be like your bread and butter argument for like why these things are effective. Like we've saved lives by ushering in private investors to actually like create these types of medicines that are effective for people. Like, I don't know why people don't do that. And just because I also have a problem with the profit incentive and the way that these types of pharmaceutical manufacturers operate, that doesn't mean that I'm discounting the advancements that they've helped usher in. I just think that the access to those resources should be better provided for, and I think that it should be under a needs-based approach as opposed to just profit.
Well, also I think people underestimate the role that public investment plays in innovation. Like a lot of people don't understand that there needs to be, in many cases, an initial public investment, because if it was all left up to the private sector, some of these investments for life-saving pharmaceutical drugs and innovations would be too risky for investors to want to invest in, because it wouldn't necessarily be profitable, because they have a higher likelihood of it failing. So you need public investment to innovate in things that would be good for the public, that you don't necessarily know are going to work out. Like research is one of the best things that public money and public investment is good for.
I mean, COVID vaccine is like the perfect example of that, where Trump's Operation Warp Speed was one of the heaviest investments in this research and development of an mRNA vaccine. Like, there's a reason why it got developed in a year, and that's always the go-to thing for these anti-vaxxers of, these vaccines take 10 years. How do we do it in 1 year? It's poison. It has to be. It's like, no, that's what's so remarkable about it, is we created what was needed in a year with all of these global enterprises coming together, collaborating on research, sharing research together. Like, that should be something that if you're a patriot, you should be like, fuck yeah, America developed a life-saving vaccine that we distributed to the world.
Uses. It's crazy. Which is why Ben Shapiro, I think, in a more principled way, actually wants to take credit for that. You know. Something I also wanted to go over with you is these job growth numbers and the economy. Did you see this morning? We have annual job revisions that we have. We've had almost 1 million less jobs since March than what was previously expected.
Yeah.
And we've seen with the last 3 months, there's been almost no job growth. This last month, almost all the job growth went to part-time work. 2 months ago, it was negative job growth, hence why Donald Trump went ahead and fired the chief exec of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Yeah. So, given all of this, do you think that this is going to contribute to, MAGA being upset with Trump? Is this going, if the economy legitimately goes into a recession, how much is this going to impact our idea of Trump being, a good economy president?
Yeah, I think that I'm glad you brought up the part-time distinction, because that is true, and I'm sure that people who are critics of what we're saying might say that is like part-time work increased, or these types of jobs were increased, but that's just not sustainable economically, and people have to get multiple jobs in part-time industries in order to make ends meet, which is terrible. And I think that us going into a recession for sure indicates a shift in the electorate when it comes to like the midterms, or it comes to 2028 even. I'm just worried that it's going to be people who are like, any alternative would be better, and we go back to like a centrist Dem who's trying to like take on the conservative social beliefs of the MAGA movement while promising like a different type of economy or economic structure. So I really think progressives have to be vigilant about demanding more from the Democrats right now, because Democrats are going to win substantially in the midterms. I think that's undeniable, looking at the data and looking at these economic projections.
Yeah, I mean, Trump is underwater even on immigration.
Yeah.
But what's simultaneously though, Democrats are also incredibly underwater. Democrats are probably, among the, which is also something I wanted to ask you about, is just like, why do you think Democrats have such low approval ratings, given that this should be, if anything, a moment for them to show a clear alternative to what is increasingly becoming an incredibly unpopular administration?
I think it's about 37% of the country will just never vote for a Democrat, no matter what. They could be promising the biggest policies in the world that would help their material conditions. They could be Jesus Christ running as a Democrat. 37% just will never vote Democrat. But I think even amongst the Democratic voter base, there's a lot of mistrust or distrust in the current regime, simply because 4 years of Biden barely talking to the American people, clearly showing cognitive decline, and just no acknowledgement from any senior party officials. All mainline Democrats saying, no, the president's vigilant, you just don't see him behind the camera. He has brain farts in front of the camera. I swear to God, he's fucking Albert Einstein off camera behind closed doors. And the American people just knew that was bullshit. And that was seen in the debate. They put in Kamala. Kamala gets zero gain when it comes to the actual election in swing states. Like, I think a lot of people are just like, I'm tired of Democratic leadership. And the only people who still trust them are ones that have close ties, like the Andrew Cuomos, or like a lot of the wealthy elites that are donating to these establishment Dems that continue to lose at the ballot box. And so I really think that there has to be an evolution in the party to regain public support and public trust, which is why people like Zohran is so inspiring. Just because Mamdani is really energizing voters like we've never seen before. We've never seen people excited to vote Democrat. It's always been, I'm voting Democrat as a harm reduction because I hate the Republicans so much. But no, people are like, I support Zohran. They're wearing his merch. They're wearing the hats. Like, we need to energize people in the same way that Trump did that with the base of like people identifying, this is my candidate and I'm fucking hyped about that. I'm telling all my friends and family that this is the person that's going to help us out. And even though that's not true, like, it can't all be on one person, that still is the energy that you need in order to actually get people excited about voting.
And having the policies be real, tangible, and bold. I think that, one thing, and obviously, I wasn't at the age where I truly understood this at the time, but people often talk about the excitement around the Obama administration, or the Obama campaign rather, and it had this veneer of hope and change, right? But to me, like looking back on that in retrospect, it's like I understand why people had this excitement, because he was such a talented speaker and politician and had just kind of an energy and excitement around him. In some ways, kind of how it was when Kamala first stepped in as the nominee.
Yeah.
There was just kind of a vibe, quote unquote. But unless you're offering something genuinely tangible and bold as a matter of policy, that's never going to materialize. And that there's a reason why people look on the Obama administration as in retrospect and saying that, you know, that wasn't what we expected. In fact, it was more or less the status quo. And you know, there were a couple things that, you know, of course, mainstream and centrist Democrats will love to tout, like the ACA, but you know, as you and I both know, that was initially a Republican, a Republican
policy,
healthcare policy, and the fact that in some ways Democrats have gone back and gone to the right relative to 2020 and 2016 on healthcare. I mean,
Chuck Schumer just refusing to have any spine at blocking the Republican budget bill,
right?
That it just shows that these people are all talk. It's all talk. And so you need to have that bold, decisive action, like you're saying. And yeah, I think that, to speak back on the vibe shift, I think the week that Biden dropped out, it was such like an optimism moment, because it's like, oh my God, every day on Twitter, you have all of these prominent journalists, all of these political commentators saying Biden needs to drop out. We need this now. And it finally felt like, oh my God, Democrats are listening to their voter base.
Yeah.
Like, that is insane.
It was. I was incredibly excited too. And I will say, even up to the election, I thought that Kamala would win.
But just week after week, Kamala, what's your plan?
Yeah.
Well, let's have the most lethal military in the world.
Yeah.
Oh, got it. Let's let states decide what transgender rights look like. Oh, got it. Interesting.
Yeah.
Let's empower Border Patrol and police to have the strongest border we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Okay, Jesus, you're literally just running as a Republican.
Yeah. Running to the right as soon as you get into the general election. And, you know, although Biden successfully obviously beat Trump in 2020, I think people underestimate the extent to which a lot of that was just COVID. You know, I think that had COVID not happened, we likely would have saw Trump's second term from 2020 to 2024. And, you know, this time around, obviously, I think inflation played a massive role, but it was clear that Kamala refused to distinguish herself from an incredibly unpopular administration of the Biden administration. And regardless of how you feel about Biden's, you know, domestic policy accomplishments, it was clear that the smart tactical political thing, like what's even the point of having him drop out if you're not actually going to distance yourself from the Biden administration ideologically,
right?
And so I think that was one of my just biggest frustrations and pet peeves, among other things, of course, Palestine being among one of them. You know, we've seen, you know, the Democratic base shift incredibly inversely on the issue of Israel-Palestine, and Democratic Party leadership and politicians, it's like it's night and day to relative to how the base is feeling.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, Andrew Cuomo and Richie Torres are just epitomes of what the underlying feelings are about that issue amongst the Democratic Party. It's just they're trying to be as open-ended as they can with allowing, you know, criticisms, even what I would consider very feeble criticisms from people like Bernie Sanders and AOC.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you know, Palestinians are getting absolutely brutalized by the current Israeli regime.
Right.
And that's
by
really
Netanyahu.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be different if it wasn't Netanyahu in office, which is still like that liberal Zionism we need to move away from.
Totally.
But that is like the only acceptable criticism that's even still challenged by modern Democrats in the leadership. I mean, literally, Richie Torres calls like some Democrats like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar as like terrorist supporters, which is like
Richie Torres does,
which is fucking insane.
That is.
And Richie Torres, he literally called on Twitch. He sent an email to Dan Clancy, a congressman from the Bronx in New York City, sent an email to the CEO of Twitch saying you need to take Hassan Piker off your platform for spreading terrorist propaganda.
Wow,
crazy. It's like these are the priorities of these people. Yeah. When Richie Torres is in the poorest district in New York City, I think even maybe the country, I read somewhere.
Yeah, I think.
And his priority is, let me challenge a critic of Israel who does a Twitch stream. Like, what the fuck is these people's priorities? Yeah. It really just, I mean, it speaks to why they're so unpopular.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it is absolutely insane.
But yeah, have you seen what's really hard is a lot of the liberal apparatus is really trying to draw a line in the sand of anybody that's critical of Dems right now. Like on TikTok, I've seen so many Gavin Newsom edits where people are like, hey, actually, as a California resident, let's not say that Gavin's going to be the savior.
Yeah.
He's actually a really bad person. And I see all these comments where like, we're not looking for a perfect person. This is why we lost in 2024 because you leftists are the ones who expect too much. And it's like, what the fuck are we doing here? We're 3 years from a presidential election.
So
we're trying to figure out what's going on. Like,
exactly.
Jesus
If
Christ.
anything,
they're acting like the election's tomorrow, and it's like we need someone in there. We can't just be picky. It's like,
and that's how you know their whole criticism of the left's criticism of Democratic Party candidates is insincere because they don't want you to criticize the candidates ever.
Yeah.
Because they think that anytime you don't step in line, you are somehow helping the Republican Party, when criticizing Biden enough to get him to step down was the only thing that even gave Democrats a chance of
like
winning.
Harry Sisson is like the perfect example of that, of someone who will never do any criticisms. Biden is so intelligent. Biden is so smart. Stop saying he's old. He's the best president ever.
Right.
And then the day he drops out, I'm so excited for Kamala. She's going to be great.
Exactly.
Like, all right, dude, so you have no principles.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You should be mad at that or calling it out of like, they tried to force Biden out. Like, how dare they did that? If you really ride with Biden that hard.
Right.
But he doesn't. He just, whatever the mainstream Democrat position is, I need to continue to choose.
Which is ironic because what they paint themselves as is being the pragmatic, tactical, political people, the politically savvy types of people. But it's like, if you're not, or even when Zohran wins, it's like, oh my God, it had something so much to do with his just digital marketing campaign. But whenever progressives lose in primary elections or in general elections, it's, oh my God, see, this is why we can never have, these sorts of policies. We can never have this sort of democratic socialist ideology when the party, people are just not in favor of that. But as soon as, the tide begins to change, they completely run away from the prospect.
It's like these people don't really get like what political ideology is.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're like, oh, you guys just try to fracture the party. We need unity. We need to get together. And it's like, well, the whole purpose of having a political framework is that you're fighting for power.
Right.
That's what politics is. It's a power struggle at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously I'm going to be critical of people who are impeding on my goals
Right.
as like a leftist who wants to see some sort of pushback against capitalist mainstream ideology. Like, of course I'm going to have like differences of opinion.
Right.
And I do believe in coalition building. You need that in a two-party system like here in the United States. You also need it in a parliamentary plurality political party in Europe. You're always going to have to make concessions and build coalitions.
Right.
But that doesn't change my core ideological framework.
Right.
That's not just going to stop because, Gavin Newsom made a funny tweet. That's awesome.
Right. And the goals. Exactly. And I think Gavin Newsom, although like I do support Newsom's attempt to do the redistricting in response to Texas's redistricting.
But why go to vote on it? That's what pisses me off.
I know.
Just
Exactly.
do it. We're not in the
Yes.
time anymore to be like, we're going to do it the right way.
Yeah.
We're losing the country. Like, you got to fucking step up.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree. But I think that, his attempt to just do, I don't know if you've even seen his like TikTok account. It is so over the top with like memes.
He just hired like a bunch of 23-year-olds.
Yeah, and it's like, now we'll be
people.
cool. Now we'll be fun. Yeah, but it's like, dude, unless your actual politics change, the response comes across as.
And I'm not trying to be full hater. I do laugh at a lot of those. Sometimes they're
of
really
course,
funny, but you need to back it up with policies.
Trump jokes sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. But you need to be able to back that up with actual policy. You need substance beyond just like the allure of, oh my God, we're taking the TikTok now, we're copying Zohran. You're not copying Zohran if you're still going to stick to technocratic capitalist policy.
Right,
I mean, Gavin Newsom is the furthest thing from a progressive.
Right.
He's a progressive in appearance only. He's a progressive on some social issues, not even a lot of them now.
Yeah.
And he really just is a stand-in for anti-Trump politics.
Right.
That's all he is
exactly.
right now.
Yeah. But
more than that.
But he may in fact be the front runner in 2028.
I also think he's going to fizzle out.
I do too. I think if anything, Kamala will begin as the front runner, but I don't see either of them.
I think Josh Shapiro is probably the scariest centrist that I think will be really strong.
I think
a Pennsylvanian like swing state governor who has very high approval ratings. I think he's like 66 approval rating amongst Pennsylvanians.
The only thing is obviously, I mean, Gaza needs to be a litmus test in the 2028 primary.
Yeah, and he's the worst.
He's like so far pro-Israel. He calls protesters pro-Hamas terrorist supporters, even the ones engaging in the peaceful protests and demonstrations, which are the vast majority of them.
I did like a 2028 tier list of Democrat
really?
candidates.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's so early. Like there's so
Yeah,
much that could
it
change,
is.
or even
Yeah.
just people that we've never heard of that come in the race, which also could be the nominee.
Which I think would be ideal, honestly.
Yeah,
There's not.
But the worst people that I think have a high probability of being the nominee is Buttigieg, Josh Shapiro,
right.
and potentially Kamala, which would be terrifying.
Yeah,
but those are like the three that I
think Kamala begins the race as the front runner just out of name recognition, but then trickles down, similar to how like Jeb Bush was in the 2016.
I think that's Gavin Newsom
Republican.
to 100%.
Yeah.
He's going to be the Jeb Bush of like
Oh,
we're
yeah.
hyping him, or not even Jeb Bush. More recent examples, Ron DeSantis. I think that Gavin is the inverse of Ron DeSantis, where
agree with
the
that.
whole political landscape is like Gavin, hyping
it's
him
like
up.
You're the Democratic governor champion.
Yeah.
You know, leading the party against the administration.
Yeah. And I think he's one bad like debate away from just getting completely ripped away from politics. So
one last thing wanted to talk to you about was the what's it called? This new Supreme Court ruling regarding immigration in Los Angeles.
LA,
And you were a part of a lot of the initial ICE protests.
Yeah, that was one of the milestones I was talking about earlier. There's like 3 inflection points in my social media career, and the ICE raids was actually a big one, where I got a lot of especially support on TikTok, just for doing a lot of those live streams. I go to a lot of these protests and I'll stay there for hours on end, just showing people what it looks like on the ground, how the mainstream media really twists the actions of protesters and demonstrators there to where a majority of people are there just in solidarity with their community members that are instigated by police. And I'm showing that in real time. Like all of the stuff of these people are here to destroy their own city. They hate all of the infrastructure. They want to just show chaos. That's not true in the slightest. In fact, it's a small number of folks who are doing that are often policed by their own demonstrators that are there. We saw people that were doing looting in Little Tokyo. I was documenting, there's like 40 people that swarmed those 3 individuals and were like, hey, stop, this is not helping the message at all. Let's move back, like let's get away from this. Zero violence, just literally the community policing their own. And then police come in with flashbangs, tear gassing us, fucking hitting us with batons. They hit like a disabled woman on a walker with a baton on a horse. It's
Jesus
fucking insane.
Christ.
Yeah, the lack of just human respect from LAPD. This wasn't even the National Guard. These are LA officers that are authorized by Karen Bass. It's showing again that Democrats are really all talk and rhetoric when it comes to the actual policies that they do, implementing things like curfews. Apparently the First Amendment ends at 8 p.m.
Oh my God.
What the fuck is that?
I know. Yeah.
So
especially when all of the escalation and even property damage and everything that happens when you militarized police forces come in.
Yeah, I mean you're energizing people's anxieties. You're going to get more violence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So for me, it's like I think that those protests are just going to amplify. What's awesome about LA is people really mean what they care about.
Especially
people get out.
On the issue of immigration and ICE.
Yeah, I mean we're the largest Latino population in the country.
Of course,
the largest. And the largest city in the country. So what do you do when you pair those two together and you have a presidential administration that's promising we're just going to rip apart communities. We're giving the authorization to ICE agents off of Spanish speaking and racial profiling to just rip people off the street. Of course you're going to get people who are fucking pissed about that. I know Latino Republicans that are pissed right now being like, hey, I was all on board with the pro-business, the helping my small business or whatever, even though a lot of that's a lie. But I'm not in favor of this immigration policy. I think there's a huge shift.
They say race cannot be a factor in college admissions, but it can be a factor in terms of in terms of immigration, investigation, detainment, etc. But I was even looking into, and ideally, obviously, it wouldn't, but this potentially could have ramifications to the way that police conduct their work in terms of like criminal, normal criminal investigations, because there's no reason why, the Constitution wouldn't, in that circumstance, would only apply to immigration investigations and not domestic criminal ones.
100%. Yeah, I mean, you're setting precedent, especially at the Supreme Court level. Like, this is the highest legal precedent that you can establish amongst your legal apparatus. And so the fact that racial profiling is of the importance to where 6 Supreme Court justices are all in agreement of, this is something chill. We should allow I think the specific legal reasoning was the executive branch has full authority to protect national security. And so we're going to let them basically do what they need to do to protect national security.
Right.
That's literally just giving credence to do whatever they want, as long
Right.
as they hide it behind, we did this for national security.
Right.
It's the same with the authorization of military force, the AUMF that was given to Bush, that basically says under Article 2, the presidency has whatever it needs in order to keep the country safe, even if that's implementing mass surveillance through the Patriot Act,
right.
even if that's
Yep.
using Guantanamo Bay on a foreign country as a prison to do whatever we want to
Torture,
people because
yeah.
it's off of American
To engage
soil.
in torture,
like,
yeah.
what the fuck is going
Yeah.
on here? It's insane.
Yeah. And we've seen with the, it's interesting because I think that the Trump administration, despite having not quite the same number of deportations as previous administrations, even especially relative to Obama, detainments have skyrocketed, and the conditions under the detainments are being revealed to be inhumane, brutal, and everything like that. I think we've seen an 800% skyrocket of arrests and detainments of immigrants with absolutely no criminal background.
Yeah.
And
that's
and
the
now
majority.
people, and exactly. I think it's over 76% of
Yeah.
those currently in detainment centers have no criminal background. And you've seen very quickly how with respect to polling data, Americans' opinions have completely shifted night and day, which to me signals that the issue of immigration has always been, in terms of politics, has always been one of framing.
Yeah.
And every time the Republicans successfully frame it as this egregious problem that needs to be solved with aggressive force and aggressive deportations,
Yeah.
instead of Democrats actually fighting that with a counter narrative, they accept the narrative and just say, well, you're just not doing enough. I even hear this a lot with some of the debates online. Obviously,
the bipartisan border bill and shit,
the bipartisan border bill, or Biden's executive order on the border, etc. But it's I think we just need to have a more robust narrative and understanding of the issue of immigration itself, because it is true that most of the people here, we benefit from being here, and the act of violently finding and deporting these people, includes infringement of privacy rights and surveillance, and
Yeah.
people are afraid to come out of their houses, and then of course now you have a system of racial profiling, which will inevitably lead to the profiling and detainment and arrest and investigations of people who are legal Latino citizens, or even really any race for that matter, because theoretically, of course, you can be an undocumented immigrant of any race or ethnicity. We're also seeing a targeting of Iranian Americans,
South Koreans right now in
yeah.
Georgia. That was one of the largest raids that was done.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just the issue of immigration, it frustrates me so much that it's clearly such a flexible issue, as long as your rhetoric and the media framing it has a
think
more clear narrative.
Framing is really the name of the game here
Right.
on this issue, because you're absolutely right. The way that they are trying to blur the lines between criminal violations and civic violations are just so disgusting. I think that we need to return to civics and teaching people what a civil violation is.
Right.
So you should not be arrested by police, for instance, for going 10 miles over the speed limit,
Right.
or for littering on the ground. I
Right.
think we'd all agree that's absolutely a waste of federal
Right.
resources.
Or for
and just
being
brutalizing people.
late on your car registration. Yeah.
Exactly. These are all civil violations, which means,
Right.
yes, you technically broke the law, but
Right.
you're not labeled a criminal.
Yeah.
And that's the exact same thing with coming into the country without proper documentation or overstaying your visa.
Right,
You're
yeah.
committing a civil violation for not going through the right legal channels.
Right.
And the blurred lines of Republicans immediately saying, these are criminals that broke our law. It doesn't matter what we do to them. We can do whatever they want because they're criminal agents that are here.
Yeah.
They're sent from insane asylums in places like Venezuela and Honduras. It's okay, we've gone so far off the point here that you are fear-mongering to your Republican base that any person who could slightly be seen as not a citizen is immediately a threat to your safe and well-being and your family's safe and
Right,
well-being.
right.
Not a single leftist is advocating for special treatment given to rapists or to murderers or to people who are violent criminals. Not a single leftist is saying that. Like, that's not even an issue here. What's at issue is, like you said, people have been here for 20 years, never committed a crime, that are mothers, that are grandmothers, that are fathers, that are working in agricultural fields, working in schools, working in healthcare. These are all people that contribute to society. And in fact, they're paying more. Most of these people are paying into our tax pool and our social security system without taking any benefits back themselves. So if anything, these are people that are an economic plus. And if you want people to be paying into the tax pool even more, then let's actually get them a pathway to citizenship to where these people are recognized as citizens in this country.
And community members too. A lot of, if not most, undocumented immigrants have, U.S. citizen family relationships, So
kids now are getting deported with citizenship. With their undocumented
exactly.
parents.
So you're
crazy.
ripping apart families and communities who, they're just as much a part of their neighborhood, their community, and the people around them, and have the relationships with the people around them as any other U.S. citizen. What are
your thoughts on taking away permanent residency for Palestine supporters?
Utterly insane. I think that's also, the Trump administration's explicit targeting of people's support for Palestinian rights, mind you. When it came to people like Mahmoud Khalil and Ozturk and any of these other permanent resident college students that they were going after in order to deport, they were not accusing them of supporting terrorism. They were not accusing them of committing a crime. They were using a McCarthy era immigration law that said if you are directly in opposition to U.S. foreign policy interests. Which is just utterly absurd. It's such an egregious violation of just the principle of the First Amendment, and it shows that the right is so incredibly insincere in their espousal of wanting free speech. But
I think we just need to keep hammering down the label of the anti-freedom party, because that's really what they are. They're against freedom of medical access and determining what's best with your doctor for your certain life, whether that's reproductive care, whether that's gender affirming care. They're anti-freedom of movement. They don't want people to be able to move within the country without getting direct approval from a bureaucrat in Washington. And they're anti-freedom speech. Like, these are people that want to police thoughts. You need to be able to support genocide, or else you're going to pay a financial
under deportation. And I think a little bit back on the immigration thing too. I think that it's just so revealing how the right has successfully been able to manufacture narratives that certain minority groups, be it the undocumented immigrant who's being exploited for their labor and who's here under desperate circumstances and who only wants a better life for themselves, that's somehow more of a threat to them. Or, for example, a trans person who just wants to use the bathroom that they identify with, that is a threat to their well-being and the fabric of the nation than, billionaires who are hoarding wealth. I just saw recently the richest 400 families' net worth is now at $6.6 trillion, and that's up over $1 trillion from just last year.
Damn.
Right? It's like the hyper concentration of wealth at the top, and the continued both horizontal and vertical integration of corporations, monopolizing every sort of sector. That is what is contributing to our instability as a nation, and the instability of people being able to have negotiating power in their workplace and find good paying jobs and being able to live just like, a normal, decent and fulfilling life. It's not these groups that are more likely to be the victims of persecution rather than to be the perpetrators of it,
Yeah. It really is just dividing the working class into viewing my neighbor as more of a threat to me than people who control all systems of power in my government. I think that narrative is dying. I think that people are getting more class conscious, even those on the right, the populist right, recognize who are the biggest villains for the populist right now. People like Jeff Bezos, people like Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
And while they're trying to like cozy up more to Trump, I think a lot of the people are like, wait, why are we celebrating Mark Zuckerberg coming to the White House with a gold chain and a perm? Like, this is somebody who I thought was ruining freedom of speech and rigged the 2020 election. Like,
they're a little torn back and forth on Elon Musk though.
Yeah, I think that most probably still have like a
positive
positive view of Elon, but it's just like, oh, he had his crash out moment.
That's
because the America Party, I mean, he's even saying like he's gonna super support Vance now. And I think Vance is that's the reason why you see Nick Fuentes and people hate Vance, is because Vance is the epitome of trying to hide his establishment roots under this MAGA rhetoric.
Well, just like oligarchic connections.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
Vance from like when Trump picked Vance, a lot of people were like, who and why and what? This dude is a senator from Ohio or a senator from
congressman.
Congressman from Ohio, and it's like, you obviously don't need Ohio's vote. It was in no way political, but it was relative for funding for Peter Thiel, David Sachs money, and Vance, already had essentially a connection with people like Elon Musk.
This is a guy who was a never Trumper, said that Trump was Hitlerian, said that he was energizing a white base.
Exactly. Like, it was very clearly for the Silicon Valley tech neo-fascist.
That's why Elon loves him.
Exactly. Mark Andreessen, all these super weirdo tech billionaires.
And that's why I really think he's going to fail in 2028. I think that a lot of the base just does not give a shit about that.
It's inorganic. It's very inorganic for sure.
He has no sauce, for a very astute political term. Zero sauce.
Yeah, no, totally. There is like a subset, I think, of Republicans that kind of like, or of like younger Republicans that kind of like him. But aside from that, I agree.
It's just like Gen Z, like
unorganic.
Suit and tie, like want to be billionaires. Like, it's just the Elon, the Elon fans.
Totally. Well, I appreciate you coming on today. It's been a super great conversation. Everyone go check out Mason at One Hand Politics on all
One Hand
socials.
Politics on all social. Been doing a lot of Twitch streaming more than anything. I got to start posting more TikToks. So that's going to be the key.
Totally.
But, thanks for having me.
Of course.
I'd love to come back.
Absolutely. Totally.